Okay, and we are live with another Upspiral Grief interview, and today I've got the absolute honour and pleasure to introduce you to the lovely James Thomas from Feel the Magic. I will get James to introduce himself in a very, very short moment. I am super excited about this for various reasons. I know, James, you're super busy, so I'm really, really grateful for the 45 minutes to an hour that you have for us. And I will also share in a moment how I actually got in touch with you. But before I do that, I'd love for you to say a few words to our audience so people know who you are, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Absolutely. No, thank you for having me. My name is James Thomas. My wife and I are the co-founders of Feel the Magic, and Feel the Magic supports bereaved kids and young people between the ages of 7 to 17 who have lost a parent, sibling, or legal guardian. We'll probably go into our own personal stories later on, but
yeah,
Feel the Magic was founded from our own personal tragedies and the lack of support for bereaved young people.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for already taking that up front, because you know this is my personal background, how I actually got in touch with you, because as most of the people know here in the movement Love in Love After Loss, I have lost my husband when our boys were only 10 and 8. And when I had a look around what is out there, it is really hardly anything. And I felt so blessed when I came across Feel the Magic. I instantly felt such warmth and such, professionalism when I read that. And what really blew me away, and, yes, we will get into a bit more detail in a minute when I ask you about how you found it is and what exactly is that organization, what you offer. But what really struck me and what made me reach out straight away was that there is one mentor per child. And I was just so gobsmacked. I'm like, how beautiful is that? There's like really, really personal support for that child available. So if you don't mind, while we're at it, it's actually the perfect time to ask you, what was your personal background, as in what made you even think about or start Feel the Magic?
Yeah, it's a long story, but I'll share the short version.
Okay.
So I lost my dad when I was 25 to cancer.
Yeah.
Both my parents, we grew up in Western Sydney. Both my parents worked hard all their life. And when my parents retired, they moved up to Queensland to fulfill a lifelong dream. And 2 years into that, Dad was diagnosed with cancer. Excuse me, cancer. And then 2 years after that, he passed away. So I remember at Dad's wake just thinking how unfair it was. They worked so hard for this, and he only really got to experience the joyfulness of retirement and his dream for only 2 years. The remaining 2 years was just, chemo and recovery and all that sort of operations and all that fun stuff that comes along with such, the dreaded cancer. But at Dad's wake, I actually wrote down a goal, and that was to buy or build a dream home for my now widowed mum and my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife. But at that stage, I was 25, still living for the weekends, had no real drive or purpose, as most 25-year-olds do. And off topic for a sec, there's a lot they could teach, especially young men at school, what's ahead of them, because there's a lot of stuff I learned at school that didn't really help me in that situation. So I did a lot of self-education, read a lot of, property books, investing books, self-help books, all that sort of stuff. But one thing I knew was that to buy this home, I needed to increase my income or to increase my net worth, because, as I said, I was just still living for the weekends. So I went down on a path of, started my own business. I've got a signwriting background. Started my own business, bought a van. And before I knew it, I was consumed by work. I was earning great money. I was, very different to the 25-year-old that was living for the weekends. I had, had copious amounts of work going on. I was extremely busy, and that lasted for some time. And in hindsight's probably our greatest lesson. In hindsight, I realized that even though I was earning great money, I had no life. I was working 7 days a week, sometimes 24-hour stints. But I was so driven to pursue that new house to make my mum proud, and obviously, look after her. She didn't need me to look after her, but I just, as an only child and her only son, I wanted to do that. But it also, Dad's loss gave me purpose, right? So I didn't really have purpose before that. So when Dad's loss happened, it kind of made me grow up It was a catalyst for me to grow up, and I wanted to make a difference, you know, not only for my future, but for my mum's as well. And then that was 2005. By 2010, we ended up buying our dream home, and we couldn't move into it because it was a display home. So we couldn't move in for a further 6 months because it was a display home in a new estate. So 6 months had come and gone. I got really busy with works. You know, we were moving from a 3-bedroom to a 6-bedroom, had to fill it with furniture. One piece I've left out is along that journey of that 5 years, I really found myself getting caught up in the material world, because all I was doing was justifying my existence. I was working. But to justify my existence, I'd spend and buy stuff to make me feel better. Which, you know, I kind of lost sight of why I was doing it in the first place. Anyway, fast forward to July 29th, 2011, within hours of picking up the keys, and removalists booked in to, removalists and friends and family booked in to help us move. And also on my 31st birthday, my mum dropped dead from a brain aneurysm, which was completely unexpected. She was fit, she was healthy. It just come out of nowhere. And it was almost like, for me personally, it was just this, you know, when you watch a movie and, you know, that someone that works so hard to achieve something, and all of a sudden
completely unexpected.
Completely unexpected. And it floored me. You know, for the first time in my life, I felt alone. Even though I was a 31-year-old man, I had no parents, I got no brothers or sisters. I just felt like an orphan child in that very moment. But it was just the shock of how cruel life could be. I just remember this can't be happening. This is not happening. But
it's so surreal. I get that.
But I guess what the ramifications of that, and I guess this is probably where the story goes a lot deeper, is, you know, the understanding that I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know I was grieving, as silly as that sounds. With Dad's death, once the funeral was over, I was fine. I was, you know, as I said, it gave me purpose. I was focused. I wanted to make a difference. But when Mum's funeral was over, I honestly thought I'd go to the funeral and I'd be okay. But I was in a world of hurt. Didn't really understand I was grieving. Didn't know how to deal with my grief. And the only thing I knew how to deal with my grief was to go back to work. And for me, it was 2 years of very, very dark times, times that, grief sends you to a dark place.
2 years of distraction and destruction,
And so self-sabotage, you know, food was my coping strategy. I ate copious amounts of food, trying to suppress the pain. But it made me realize that no one's ever taught me how to grieve. We're not taught how to grieve the loss of someone. And
absolutely.
Death is hereditary. We're all going to die at some stage. So why not learn how to deal with those big emotions? And, you know, on the flip side of that, my wife was a bereaved child. She lost her older brother, Corey, to leukemia when they were kids. So both of us have got that, I guess, aspect.
Very deep understanding.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for sharing that, James, because the thing is, when before we built this connection, you know, like we had an idea to do a few things together, or I had that idea, I'm still working on that, to do a few things to feel the magic, or was because I was really, really touched by what you guys put out there. And I can see so many parallels, like, with what you do and why I'm doing what I'm doing. And my main reason for that was because I was dealing with grief very, very differently to most people. And I totally agree. Society has got such wrong expectations of how we deal with the loss, like really, really wrong. And I realized that I did things very differently. And when I wrote a book about it and it went to, you know, number 61, top 100 list of Australia, I realized I had something that I needed to share with this world, like literally with this world. I went global, I went all out there, and I'm like, I want to change this. I really want to heal the world. I know it's a massive vision and I'm sticking to it. And when I come across someone like you know, who really has that deep understanding by going through it himself and has created something so beautiful out of it, I said, I have to meet you. And, you know, I had a meeting with you and your wife, and I was like absolutely touched, but I did not know your whole background story till, you know, this voting thing came up. It's like vote for Thomas, and I'm like, I absolutely vote for you because I love what you've done. And do you want to quickly share what that voting was about? Because I don't know the exact background. I just knew I had to vote for you because I love what you guys do.
Yeah, no, one of the staff kindly nominated me as one of our local Westfields Hero Awards. So I made it through the top 6, and the top 3 get announced on the 27th of this month. So fingers crossed, see what happens.
Yes, absolutely. Can we still vote for you, or is it too late?
Sorry?
Can we still vote for you, or is it too late?
All finished now.
Otherwise, I would have asked you to share the link as well. But anyway, that was actually the moment when I voted for you, where I read a little bit more about your background, and I was like, wow, this is so beautiful, because I was 20 when I lost my dad, and quite similar. Like, he's been working so hard all his life, and and then finally we moved into this family home, and it was like a really large home that he inherited from his great auntie, and L-shaped, and every one of us, like, I'd say the daughters, the 2 sons decided, like, so my 2 brothers decided not to move in there, but my 2 sisters and I, we all had our own apartment, and our parents, and it was so picture perfect because we were all growing up, and I was like 17, just before my 18th birthday, before I moved out, but I had the apartment right next to my parents, and it was just beautiful. And 2 years later, he died of cancer. Exactly the same thing. You work so hard all your life, you achieve what you always wanted to create this beautiful home for your kids and all of us living together, happy family. And then that happened, and it happened so fast, and then in my case, it was not my mom, but it was my husband who died from a brain aneurysm, just like that. Same thing. He worked so hard, was super fit, super healthy, nobody expected it, 45, prime of his life. And dropped dead like that. For me, it was this vision of he's been unplugged, like, literally. And so here we are, and I know that all of us and everyone watching this here right now has dealt with some sometimes very unexpected, sometimes before, but it still hits you really hard. No matter how prepared you are or not, you're never really prepared for this news. So I would love for you to share a little bit more about what Feel the Magic exactly does. So it's an organization for bereaved children. I know that you run camps, because that was the one reason why I reached out to you, because I really wanted to put my boys into one of your camps. And you've got quite a waiting list. I think it was about half of your waiting list. So there's a lot of need for that, because there's not many people who offer support. So can you share a bit more about what you actually do, not just in the camp, but in general? How do you support these children?
Yeah. So I guess I'll just go back to, following on from my own story. I ended up selling everything, and not the house, of course, but selling everything and going to Disneyland, and going to America, and Disneyland was a part of our itinerary, and that's where I just had the idea of I simply had an idea of raising money to send kids who have lost their parent or a sibling, like my wife and I had, and send the remaining parent to Disneyland. That's all the idea was, and we come back.
I love it. Absolutely love it. I didn't know that part either. I love it.
And Disney. There's a lot of correlation between Disney and grief. So I don't know if you know the Walt Disney story.
Yes, I do, actually. I've only just watched it a few months ago. I love it. Absolutely beautiful.
So he lost one of his parents after buying a house, after he made his money, but they died after he had workers come out and clean their fireplace. And the chemicals they used when they put it on that night, they called that. I did
not know that. No.
Yeah, and one of the.
I thought you were talking about the story of him not giving up, and I know the whole background how he started Walt Disney, but I didn't know the part.
So
otherwise, I wouldn't have said what a beautiful story when he lost his parents. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no. It was. I'm pretty sure it was his mother that both parents were unconscious. One of his parents died, and he completely blamed himself. And so every movie he designed and wrote never ever has the happy family. It's always the princess and the king. The mum's never around. Bambi loses the mother. What else is there? There is Lion King. The father dies.
Yeah.
Every single movie. There's one that's come out. Well, he didn't write this, but Disney's. Disney's link between grief and storytelling. It's quite a beautiful thing. There's a new movie out, Onwards, I think it's called, by Pixar. It's about 2 brothers that lose their dad. And a beautiful story. But all Disney movies have got a grief connotation to them. So it's really uncanny that this is where the idea was thought of. And to see the Disney story unravel, it just felt right. Anyway, back to what I was talking about. So the idea of sending families to Disneyland, it was fantastic. We sent about 13 or 14 families. We were doing this on the side, just a feel-good thing. And what we realised was that the more families that come and gone, they were coming together and getting support from one another. And we realised that Disneyland's great, but it's not long-term impact. There's no education. There's no it's just hope.
Beautiful event, but not long-lasting.
Yeah. So the more we looked into it, we thought there's nothing else out there that provides ongoing support. So we put our heads together and created Camp Magic. So Camp Magic is a place for grieving kids to grow. So it supports, again, kids between the ages of 7 to 17 on a 3-day program, each with their assigned adult mentor. And they are taken through our, and it's all been designed and created by our mental health professionals, our head psychologist, Robbie Fullerton. So we have a dedicated program that goes over a 3-day period that teaches these kids age-appropriate coping strategies on how to deal with their grief throughout their journey. And what society doesn't understand is their journey is life. It's not just 6 months after the funeral, 12 months after the funeral,
it's over.
Grief will always rear its ugly head every single time. So our premise is that no matter what stage of the grief we're at, we can provide you tools and ways to live with your grief in healthy, positive ways, because we truly believe we're preventing the statistics of tomorrow. You look at the mental health crisis that we're all dealing with at the moment, and there's a huge percentage of them that if you look at the core root of the problem, it's grief. It's unresolved grief. Whether it's a loss of someone or something's happened to them, grief plays a huge part in the mental health path. So we truly believe we are preventing that by providing tools, getting to the source of the problem, and giving them the education and overall the connection with other kids who actually understand what they're going through. So, I think
that is massive.
You got 2 boys?
I've got 2 boys. They're now 10 and 12.
I'm sure in their school that they don't know many other kids in their situation. So that's they're isolated. They're isolated in their own minds, not with friends, but no one really understands what they're going through. We expect time.
And it's also, I love that you say, that each kid has got their own mentor, because when Flynn and Jet lost Rob, their dad, it was they couldn't be any more different. They've always been very, very different in looks and behavior. And Flynn, my older one, is a communicator. He wanted to share with everyone. He needed everyone to know what he was going through. Not so much his emotional state. He was quite holding back with that. But the fact that he lost his dad, he needed everyone to know that. And it was hard for him and confronting, because every time he said it was very emotional for him, but he kind of felt that need for people to know, versus Jed did not want to talk about it. And that was the exact line he kept saying over and over again: I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. And I was so worried as a mum, because I'm like, you're obviously grieving, you obviously need support. And how do you support a child that completely closes off, but at the same time, he was the one showing his emotion all the time? It was complete polar opposite between the two of them. So he cried almost every night. And then that's when I reached out to the camp and said, I really want to put them on the waiting list and get them into the program. So So
that's camp. So we've set that up now in Sydney, regional New South Wales, in Armidale, Victoria, and the ACT. We also have a parent and guardian workshop. So what we're doing is, when a child comes to camp, or a young person, I should say, comes to camp, completely separate from their parent. And we do that because we want the child, we take them pretty deep into, the emotion of grief and loss. And if they have that safety blanket there in terms of their parent or guardian, they'll run to that person every time when it gets a bit uncomfortable. So we, in the beginning, it was just the parents, the children's program, the Camp Magic. What we realized is that these kids were having a life-changing experience. When the parent comes to pick them up on the Sunday, they're going,
don't know what to do with it.
So if the parent doesn't want to talk about their grief, then automatically that shuts off any lines of communication around the emotions of grief. So we designed a parent and guardian workshop where we teach the parents what we're teaching the children. Organically, it's not created to focus on the parents' grief. It's more about
yeah,
making them aware of what the children have been going through.
mm,
However, what happens organically, same with the children, when you bring a bunch of parents who have either lost a child or are now widowed into the same room, you get them talking and they're learning, growing from each other, because they're, you know, in your case, you know, you may see someone who's 6 months into their journey, and you'd be able to empower that person really well, because that person can't even see that light into the tunnel yet.
Yeah,
you know? And
absolutely.
it's all about giving each other hope. It's that connection and knowing that life will be okay as long as you learn to live with this pain forever.
Yeah.
That's the Parent and Guardian Workshop.
That is so important, because it's also just that feeling that you're not alone in this. You know, so often people go to that, and I hear that in my group over and over again. You know, until I found this group, I honestly thought I was so alone in this, because there are so many grief groups out there, but they're not very supportive in grief at all. It becomes a platform for sharing your pain, your hurt, but there's no real help. There's no support. I don't know why they're called grief support groups, because there's usually no support in there. And I'm just reading the comments, James, because we've got Stephanie Pinto watching as well, who I already interviewed in this group. She's an emotional intelligence coach, and she works with children, so she's super excited watching this. So yeah,
right.
Such impact the work you do. Yes, absolutely, Stephanie. It's just so beautiful. I absolutely love it. Yeah. So just question for you, James, now, because I know with COVID, like obviously, you know, and I always try to avoid the topic COVID altogether in this group. However, it had a huge impact on your camps, as in not being able to run this in person. So what came out of that? Because I know we try quite often to schedule meetings, and then all of a sudden you got swamped with, you know, we have to do this and that and online programs, and there was a lot coming out of the woodworks. Would you like to share a little bit more about all these programs that you offer now?
Yeah, absolutely. So COVID did wipe out everything. So as of March, whatever date it was in March, Magic had no programs. So all of our face-to-face programs were gone.
Yeah.
But the silver lining for us was the last 2 years, we realized that we needed to get an online program started. And we wanted to do a which I'll elaborate on in a sec, a Magic Quarterly. So the biggest question I was constantly being asked every time I was pitching for funding or speaking to a corporate is what support we offer families in between camps. And the honest answer was, at this stage, nothing, because, you know, we're under-resourced and we're underfunded. So, but the intention is to create a Magic Quarterly, which I'll go into in a sec. So when COVID hit, we you know, the team and I, we sat down and said, what are we going to do? All of our programs are gone. Here's what we've been thinking the last few years. Why don't we get this happening? So within a 6-week period, we turned around a online version. So it's called the Healthy Grieving Program. And that doesn't take families or kids as deep as the face-to-face programs are, because it's unsafe online. However, it does provide similar training and similar concepts and coping strategies over a 3-day period online. And we support 10 children and their parent or guardian every single week online. So it's 480 kids over a 12-month period, over a 48-week period. That's maintained the impact that we've had from camp. We've also launched a grief resource hub. So we can support families from a terminal diagnosis all the way through to 12 months and beyond the passing. Simple to read information. And I'm sure a lot of your viewers would agree, when you're at the hospital and someone passes and they give you a pack, there's not many people that read that pack, because it's the wrong timing. It's just your brain not ready to take on information. Your brain has just gone into survival mode.
Coping mode,
absolutely. And you don't need a pack then. So our website is just basically designed for people to go any time throughout the grief journey. It's reverting to the Feel the Magic tips and tricks, you could call them, but simple to read. You know, 5 to 6 easy tips that you can follow. Because a lot of those brochures you receive when you're grieving and you're sad and you're in pain, they're almost a novel, and you're not taking that in. So if you can just give if you can give 5 tips and you're only taking one on board, that's one thing you can put into practice that day. So that's a grief resource hub. And then we've also launched a Magic Quarterly, which we're launching the first one this Saturday, the 10th of September. Oh no, what are we now? October. 10th
of the 10th, 2020. Perfect timing.
Yeah, there you go. So so the Magic Quarterly this Saturday. So we're past and present. Families come together, and it's a day of reiterating what they've learned. It's also a day of hearing public speakers talk about different coping strategies and different ways of grieving. And it's about, keeping that connection alive that these families are accustomed to from our face-to-face programs. So they'll be happening every quarter, ideally in every single state that we operate in.
Yeah.
So
beautiful. I absolutely love that. So you said the Magic Quarter will be face-to-face, you said?
It will be, yeah. With COVID.
Yeah, so beautiful. And yeah, of course. And is that all just people who've been through your program, or are new people open to come to that as well?
Yeah, it's also open to new people. So it's almost a prerequisite to camp. If you're not sure about giving your child away for 3 days, come along to this for the day and meet other families, get to know Feel the Magic a bit more.
I would love to come and bring my boys to that.
Okay.
Anyway,
I'll organise our coordinator to get you involved.
I'd love that. And also on that note, for everybody watching here, James will and can share whatever links he has available for you guys to check out the programs, check out the organization, and really get an even better feel for this organization, because it's just amazing. And as always, I ask my interviewees to please feel free and share whatever information you want to share about your online programs, whatever you want to put in there. You can, after the interview, go and post it in the comments below. I'd really love for people to be able to get in touch with you quite easily. So yeah, social media links, anything that you like.
Yeah, right. So I guess again on COVID, it's the silver lining for us. It's made us more of a holistic support for families.
Yeah.
With
and gives you the option to reach a lot more people. Yeah.
And the resource hub will continually grow, and that'll, because I guess for camp, we don't take on any families or children if it's 6 months or less beyond death. It has to be 6 months beyond. And the reason for that is when someone dies, and this isn't just me making it up, it comes from our head psychologist.
Yeah.
When someone dies, usually everyone's there to support, neighbors, friends, family, they fly interstate from overseas to support that family. The funeral comes and goes, and they're still sticking around, and they may have to go back, and they're checking in every now and then. But for that child, it's almost a novelty, because they're the center of everyone's attention.
Yeah.
Grief really hasn't kicked them in the pants yet.
Yeah.
Not until we all go, well, they're doing okay now. It's around about the 6 months time frame where people have got to get on with their own lives, and then that's where that child will sit there and say, geez, my new normal, I'm not liking this. Dad's never walking through the front door. My brother's never coming home. Or my sister's not playing with me anymore. That's when grief really kicks them in the pants. And that's, and for the remaining parent, that's the same thing, where people avoid them, or people don't want to talk to them anymore because, or don't, and you find with grievers, as I'm sure there's a lot of people in your group have done this, they don't want to upset the person they're talking to, so they will keep all their pain to themselves.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
I've noticed that a lot with my boys as well, that they, it was like a protection mechanism for me to not share things. And, again, on very different levels, but it's really interesting. Like my older son, Flynn, came to me one day and he said, Mum, I think that everyone's forgotten that Dad passed. And I said to him, they probably have, Flynn, and there's no main intention behind that. That's just the way it is. I said, imagine you would hold on to every single grief or loss that you hear throughout your life, and you would hold on to it all the time. I said, that is what people do. They have to go on with their lives. It's not their loss that they've experienced, it's ours. And so for us, it's present in a very different form and for a lot longer. And I've got my own ways to deal with that and provide happiness and joy for them in their lives. Yet other people do go back to their normal, and that literally happens around the 6 month mark, where people drop off and drop back into their normal, and that is just normal. And that's when we need to recreate how we want our normal to look like, and that is where most of the support is needed. I absolutely love that. I couldn't agree more with that 6 month mark. And the really, really close ones are probably still there between the 6 and 12 month mark, but even that really goes back to a rather normal, which is such a weird word for that situation, but yeah.
It makes sense. It makes sense, and it is from that 6 month mark where that's where you should be receiving your packs and your information, because that's when you need it most. Not in the hospital when you've been told someone's passed.
Yeah, I love that. I love all the background noise. It's not just a virtual background. You can actually hear all the birds here. They're all chirping with us. Yeah. So in terms of, you said the parent, because I really want to hear a little bit more about that as well. You said the parent support is something rather new that you have now added, or how long have you been doing
that's been
the parent?
2 years now.
2 years. Okay.
2 years, yeah.
And has it always been online, or was it something you started in person?
No, so that's face-to-face, but with our Healthy Grieving program, which is the online version, it goes over a 3-day period, and there's a couple of sessions where the young person will do it with their parent or guardian.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like a way for the family to, I guess, really, there's an example of a child that never ever heard his mother explain her feelings around grief and how her life was, just turned upside down. He never really understood that, and so he only understood that when they actually worked on this program together. That's the premise behind that is allowing families to heal as one, because it's okay to heal yourself, but you could have family members that are struggling, and but if you can kind of pick up on, if you can use the right language and the right ways to support one another, really heal together and allow each other to thrive at different stages.
That is so beautiful. I really love that. I want to share one quick thing. When Rob passed, I actually had our celebrant who married us reach out to us, and she said, and she gave me a bit of time because she knew, it would not be the appropriate timing straight away. And she said to me, Maria, in your own time, I wanted to give you a few weeks, and whenever you feel ready. I'm not really sure if you actually know that I'm also a family bereavement counselor. And I was like, oh my God, no, I didn't know. It's so beautiful, because we always stayed in loose contact with Mary Beth. We had a shaman wedding barefoot at the beach, and we always stayed in loose contact with her. And when she reached out and told me that, I was so touched. I'm like, of course I want to do that. And I organized, she's actually already retired, but she did it for us because she had this personal connection. And she said, you and Rob always stood out for me as a couple, even as a celebrant. I've married so many people, but you always stood out for me as a couple. And I just want to gift you that. It was so beautiful. And the interesting part about that was she came to our home, which I really loved. And this was my first time. It was really emotional for me that I heard my kids explain their father's death and how they heard about it for the first time. I never heard them explain it, because usually I was the one telling the story, and hearing it from them and what they were thinking I was doing upstairs. And Flynn said, oh, Mum was upstairs working and doing her stuff. And I was like, well, I wasn't actually working. I was frantically ringing everyone because I couldn't get hold of Dad, and I did not want you to worry. So I was upstairs, doing all these phone calls. And it was so beautiful to actually be able to chat to them about it and hear the story from them was so touching, really highly emotional for me. And it went so deep, and I'm so grateful that I had this moment, because you usually don't get that. It's usually the parent who tells the story, or the parent left behind who tells the story, not the kids. And that was, I think that's amazing work that you do there. Really, really important.
Kids are definitely a lot smarter than we think. They really absorb a lot. And, I guess as parents, it is, in your case, you're losing God forbid, touch wood. If I lose my wife, you've really got to take care of although you have to take care of your children, you've really got to take care of your own emotional needs, because you're leading by example. And if your children are watching that and you're suppressing it and you don't want to talk about it, well, that's what they're going to do. And before you know it, you've got, in my case, eventually my boys will be teenagers, and you get too angry.
You've got 2 now, don't you?
Yeah, 2 little boys, 2 babies.
Yeah. How old are they?
2.5 and almost 8 months.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. That's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry I interrupted you. You said when your boys are teenagers.
Yeah, so I was just saying, in the event if I ever lost my wife, I know within myself I would need to lead by example on the best way to deal with my emotional needs, because I guess a lot of parents, they tend to forget their own needs and give it all to their children, which is, I'm not saying that's wrong. I think it's natural instinct to do that as a parent, but you know, you've really got to take care of your own emotional needs. And we do have some tips on our website where you can have a look at that and find out. But it's, you know, I guess as a leader of the family, you've got to show your children how to best cope emotionally. Emotional intelligence is really, really important, and they'll follow your lead. You know, it's being comfortable with the uncomfortable, having those conversations with your children about losing mum or losing dad, or it's tough, but it's healing.
It's so important though, because it's your only chance that you can do that. And to be honest, like, you know, after Rob passed, I always had this feeling, eventually, obviously not straight after, but eventually I would love to talk to them about what would happen to them if something was to happen to me. And I would love to have the conversation with them. I wouldn't want anybody else to have the conversation, you know. And I always thought, how on earth, you know, would you address that with your children? And interestingly enough, it was addressed by my children, and they just asked me straight up one day when we were upstairs. And, you know, I've got quite a large master bedroom upstairs, and they were just playing around while I was folding washing, and all of a sudden, you know, Flynn sitting on the windowsill, and it's like, Mum, what would happen to us if something was to happen to you? And I'm like, I'm glad you asked me that, because I actually did want to talk to you about it, and I really didn't know how to address it. I said it out straight how I felt, and I was really grateful and really acknowledging that as well, that it came from him. And I did share that with him, you know, who it would be, and that Dad and I had made this decision together, actually, and that we honestly saw that this would be the perfect person or the perfect family who would take care of them, and so they would stay in the family and still have that, you know. It was a really beautiful, confronting conversation, and it ended with a light joke as well, because I said, but I always had this feeling I would turn 93. I had this, and Gemma was like, why 93? And I said, I don't know. It was just a number that popped up in my head, and I always talked around about it. And, you know, I said, one day, if you're going to have children, I'd love to meet my grandchildren. I said, no pressure, but, you know, I'd love to be around to meet them. And he said, do you think you can make it to 100? And I said, yeah, I'll try. So we kind of talked around, and it was so beautiful that we had the conversation. I'm really glad. But I couldn't agree more with the looking after yourself, because the thing is, and I know Stephanie's going to jump for joy when I say that, it is the whole idea of, you can't tell them you need to look after yourself, but then don't do it, because children always learn by example and by what we do. And even no matter what you tell them, they still pick up that there's a discrepancy between what you say and what you do. So I really made that a priority to look after myself, to get me time. And I do the same in my group, because in my group, I see them all as like, not really my children, but, you know, I do the same thing. I'm very authentic when I go through waves, when I have a day, I don't know, crying at the beach. I share that in the group, because I don't want people to falsely think that I always have my shit together, excuse my French, and that I'm always like, you know, on top of everything. I mostly am, because I create that, and my mindset is on that, you know, wanting to create happiness and joy. Yet we do have those waves. Grief comes in waves, and that's just, I always compare it to the ocean, you know, and when a wave hits me, I want to be prepared, and I ride that wave, believe me, and I lay on the back and breathe and don't drown, do you know? So it's all these analogies and tips and tricks how you actually deal with that, and that's exactly what you provide as well in your programs, and I absolutely love that. So any questions from the audience, please do post them in the comments below, because either James or myself will definitely get back to you. And I know that we always have hundreds of people watching this later on due to time differences, and I always put a disclaimer in there as well. This video is recorded and will be shared on different platforms, not your questions, but this actual video will be shared on other platforms as well. So at any stage, if you have questions, please come back to this video, post your questions in the comments below, and we can get back to you. We can provide you with further links or comments. James, I'm going to ask you, as I said before, you know, please share ahead whatever you have, social media, following links, anything that you want to share, your website, your programs, please do share them here in the group. And I'd love for you to share maybe a couple of tips or tricks that you can give us in terms of coping techniques, I'd really like to hear that.
Yeah, okay. Put me on the spot.
Yes, it's my specialty.
Yeah, it really is a good question.
Because I asked you that question because you said, you provide them with literally just 5 to 6 things that they can do. And I thought maybe you can share 1 or 2 of those that jump into your head first with us here in terms of
I think number one,
daily basis.
I think number one for me would be, so we have 4 values. So our organization is built on 4 values: so empathy, empowerment, growth, and connection. So I feel like the first value, empathy, is, I think that's probably the first lesson I've learned, is people who are grieving don't want to feel your pity or be felt sorry for, or and what I've seen is, if whether it's grief, whether it's they're abused, or whether they come from a broken home, if a child is not still within a safe routine, they're going, they haven't got boundaries, because they felt sorry for, and they let it go, they're allowed to get away with a few things that they normally wouldn't because someone's passed away. Yeah. And you hear it often, oh, that poor child, oh, that poor kid, oh, I feel sorry for you. They don't want that. That's the worst thing you can do for a young brain's development process. It's about empathizing with them, getting on the level, going, wow, I understand. I understand what you're going through. Even if you don't, it's not about, you don't want to, you're not trying to put yourself in their shoes, right? But you're just saying, look, I understand what you're going through, and it sucks. Acknowledge it. It sucks. What you're feeling right now, it's harsh. Acknowledge your feelings, but you don't put up with bad behavior. So we acknowledge, we accept what's going on. But however, I'm going to provide you something. Rather than feel sorry for you, I'm going to provide you something that can allow you to grow in different ways. But you've really got to. You've really got to do the work. It's not about sitting back and going, well, it was me. My dad died when I was 6, and now I'm 42, and I'm not living my full potential. So it's really being brave enough to. Sorry, it's not about the kid. Coming back to empathy, it's about showing empathy rather than feeling sorry for them. Yeah, and being strong in that.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Yeah.
I always said to my mom, sympathy is not helping me. Empathy is okay. That's what you need. Because it holds you, it catches you,
Because once you develop, adults and young people, but if you develop a victim mentality, that's very, very hard to get rid of later in life. Because the world's against you, and that's not what these children. That's not what you want these children to grow up with. The world's not against them. They've just, unfortunately, grief. It's their loved one's time. It's just it's their time, but that doesn't affect your future or the way you live your life. You've got to learn the tools to get through.
Yeah. I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. I find this so valuable because that's exactly what I did in my case. I grew up in a family where victimhood mentality was quite strong and quite in the foreground, unfortunately. And it happened in my life as well. When my dad passed, it became my story. It became my, I've lost my dad. And I completely, for about a year, I ran around like a preacher telling everyone to sort out your relationship with your parents because they could die like that. And then one day it hit me and I was like, oh my God, I'm here preaching to everyone about that, but I'm not doing it. I have not sorted out my relationship with my mom because my focus was always on, I've lost my dad and poor me. And when I recognized that, it was the biggest game changer for me. And you're right, it's really hard to let go of it. It literally took me about a decade or 2 really to let go of that victimhood mentality and make my story become history and go like, you know what, I've got now and I do want to recreate that. And it took me a lot of work. I have to admit that. It took me a lot of work to turn it around and get out of victimhood mentality because it was uncomfortable and I did not like it. Yeah. At the time, of course, I thought it was comfortable, so I stayed in it. But then when I had the outside perspective, I started really disliking it and really working hard on letting go of that. So I really want to highlight this lesson that you just shared with us. Empathy over sympathy is the go-to, and I absolutely love it. And it's such a beautiful gift that you're providing us here.
Thank you.
And if you have any questions, please do share them with us. James, I cannot thank you enough for being here today, because I know how busy you are, and I know there are a billion things going on in your life right now with all the online programs and you moving with your family. So I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for being here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for everyone tuning in, and thank you for asking me.
Yeah, absolute pleasure to have you. Have a fantastic day, everyone. Have a good night wherever you are watching from. And we'll be back in 2 weeks with the next Upswell Grief interview. Thank you so much, James Thomas from
Thanks,
Field of
guys.
Magic.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Bye.